Good afternoon, colleagues. Imina 35 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. When we had Minority Leader on the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Madam. Oh, wow, that was loud. Sorry about that, you guys. Madam Speaker, I know that when we left, there was an inquiry, and I had already closed. But after speaking with the author of the legislation of the bill, Madam Speaker, I'd like to withdraw my amendment. I think that we came to a consensus and an understanding that it's a win-win for everybody in this situation, and definitely fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion to withdraw, without any objection, motion carries. We are still on the main motion at this time. Do you have a point of information? To the author, we still are on the main motion. I will recognize Senator Regine Bisco-Lee. You are recognized on the main motion of the bill. 241.
Sujus Maasi, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues. After careful thought, I've decided to try to come to a productive compromise for this measure. So I have a few amendments that I'd like to proffer, really in the name of getting or granting some flexibility to these agencies, but also placing the onus back on our body to really prioritize the mandates found in this bill. And so we submitted the amendments to legal and to the clerks, and they are uploaded on the Google Drive. So the first one is page 196. And it reads, subsection A, the Department of Parks and Recreation shall, and then the additional language is subject to the availability of funds, and then the sentence continues, prepare and implement a public safety awareness program. And so, Madam Speaker, I think what this amendment is attempting to do is really to recognize that, yes, we do have some resource issues in some of these agencies and these departments. We want to be cognizant of that and aware of that. But we do also want to prioritize these hiking safety and rescue issues. We want to make sure that both our tourists and locals who go out and enjoy the outdoors, whether it's in the ocean or hiking in our jungles, that they are aware of these safety concerns. And so we just really want to be able to prioritize that and to not make this necessarily an unfunded mandate, but just to give them the flexibility to do what they can with what they already have existing. And so, Madam Speaker, that's my first amendment.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Are there any objections, or does anybody wish to speak? Senator Tello, Taitagui Minority Leader, you can speak on the Lee amendment.
Actually, Madam Speaker, I just can't find it in here. I did refresh, so if we can just get a short recess so show. I don't see it here.
Did everybody find it? Yes? Okay, on the amendment, does anyone else wish to speak? Senator San Augustine on the Lee amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to rise in support of the amendment and future amendments that will be identifying subject to availability of funds. It fulfills their fiduciary responsibility that Parks and Recs and all the agencies that will be supporting this bill have the available resources, and they can do it, not just do it because it's shall. availability of funding. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Anyone else on the Lee amendment? If not, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Lee, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, colleagues. The second amendment is a similar one, page 2, line 15. Again, adding the words subject to the availability of funds. On section B, section 1B. Thank you.
On that amendment? On that amendment, Minority Leader, do you want to speak on the amendment? You are recognized. If not, are there anyone else wishing to speak? Are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Senator Lee, you still have the floor.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, and again, thank you, colleagues. Just the final amendment to round out this section. It's on page 3, line 13, section 1C of the bill to read the Guam Fire Department, the Guam Department of Agriculture, Guam Visitors Bureau, and the Bureau of Statistics and Plans shall, and the additional words would be subject to the availability of funds, provide any assistance and support as requested or necessary to the Department of Parks and Recreation in the creation and implementation of the Safety Awareness Program and Outreach Plan as required by this section. And again, I thank my colleagues for their support.
Sujos Masi, Senator Lee, on the amendment, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Lee, you still have the floor.
Yeah, Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker. Again, in closing, I'd just like to express my gratitude to our colleagues for being willing to engage in debate on this floor. I know we don't always agree, but I think that our willingness to come back to the table, to work together, to try to find a viable way forward, this is really a tenet of lawmaking that we should all continue to strive for. And again, I thank my colleagues for their consideration. Sujos Masi.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Vice Speaker, can you please take the podium? The dais, please. Can I, so did you want me to? Can I? Yeah, yeah.
Speaker Barnes, you are recognized.
Si Zeus Maasi, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill. Madam Speaker, I want to note for the record that I did have an amendment that was uploaded earlier this morning that will provide for some changes in as far as this amendment that I wanted to proffer, but based on the continued collaboration with the author of this legislation and my support for the efforts of this bill, Madam Speaker, I'd like to proffer a different amendment, and this amendment would be, if you can just, it says introduced by Kelly Marsh Titano and myself. It's on page 3, line 14. And it specifically will read, shall provide, delete the word any, and then add in technical assistance and support as requested or necessary and is feasible to the Department of Parks and Recreation. And Madam Speaker, in those efforts, we too have been collaborating with the Guam Fire Department, and as you know, with their efforts and their need to provide services as it relates to the COVID response and the shortages of personnel, especially as we approach the dry season. We know that the fire department would have to fight a lot of the fires that have been already been dealing with. They are overwhelmed, and we know that this is dry season, and we wanted to be able to work closely with them. But they shared with the author of the legislation that they were very supportive in making sure that if we provided that an amendment to say that they will support the technical aspect and to ask for that technical assistance, that they would support those efforts. So again, Madam Speaker, I hope my colleagues will take heed to that and accept this amendment on both the author and myself.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the amendment? Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, can you have the author of the amendment restate and where?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will yield to that, and that would be on page 3, line 14.
There's
It
an
would-
existing amendment on file. There's an existing amendment on file in the Google Drive. It is noted as FA space B241 KMT L14 page 3. Is this the existing amendment that we're discussing?
It says Kelly Marsh title
That's
on it
correct.
and to add TRMB.
That's correct. So colleagues, are we all on the same page now? It's under the floor amendments file B241 KMT, line 14, page 3. Senator San Agustin, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I understand the verbiage, but doesn't the other amendments that identified the availability of funds should have been sufficient? May it be technical or whatever they want? It's based on money? I thought that covered that already, but yeah, I have no objection to this, but I'm just want to make sure we're not. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a point of inquiry, Senator San Agustin? No point of inquiry. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the amendment? Senator Tello Taitagui, Minority Leader, you are recognized.
So Jose Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in support of this amendment. In fact, I had the opportunity to speak with the author on the legislation, and actually this was something that she was going to proffer that would actually take care of all the issues regarding, funding. And her intent, based on our conversation, was that of technical assistance and technical support, not so much to, provide funding or any type of resources that require a purchase of any of the other agencies in order for her plan to come to fruition, and the Parks and Recs plan. So we had discussed this actually earlier, and even though the prior amendment that was proffered is clean, it's actually an amendment I was going to make earlier to do the same language, but I think good Senator of Nimitz Hill, right? Are you Nimitz Hill? Okay, of Nimitz Hill was coming up with this amendment that would, basically suffice, because the whole morning I've been talking about being fiscally responsible. And I think this is just adding to it, to ensure these agencies that it is just technical assistance and technical support. And of course, again, as is feasible to the Parks and Rec. So you're adding another layer, as is feasible. So I stand in full support of this amendment. It definitely strengthens the amendment. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Leader Senator Taitagui. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the KMT and TRMB amendments? Speaker Barnes, you're welcome to close.
Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I just want to say, in the efforts of continuing to work closely with the author of this legislation and in support of the efforts of what the institutional knowledge that Guam Fire Department will bring to the table is very significant in nature, and they have a lot to contribute, and providing that technical assistance will be well worth it. So I just hope my colleagues support the effort of this amendment. Sitos Masi.
Yes, thank you, Speaker Barnes. And just to be clear, because we had Senator Lee's amendment prior to this, the new amendment, now that everyone is on the same page, if the amendment should pass, if there are no objections to the amendment and the amendment should pass, it will read, shall, subject to availability of funds, provide technical assistance and technical support as is feasible to the Department of Parks and Recreation. So in its entirety, if this amendment passes, that's what it will read because of the previous amendments made. Are there any objections to the amendment? No objection, amendment passes. Speaker Barnes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the author for giving me the opportunity to support this effort and be part of the co-sponsorship with her on this. And as we heard previously from one of our other co-sponsors from the village of Talafofu, who spoke about the need for making sure that we have these safety awareness programs and outreach plans in place, I think that this is a good bill, and a bill that has been in the works for quite a number of months, and I hope that our colleagues support the efforts, Madam Speaker. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise and support Bill number 241-35 COR. Sainamasi.
Thank you.
Situas Maasi, Majority Leader We are still on the main motion. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, would the author like to close?
Suduis Masi, Madam Speaker, and to all others who had dialogue and helped strengthen this bill. That is what we want to ensure happens, is that the strongest version of the bill goes forward. And I do want to note, I will send it out to all colleagues, but we did get support from Daniel Stone, our fire chief, by email, and I will share that with everyone again. And he does specifically use that language of supporting the fire departments, providing technical assistance and support as is reasonably feasible within their scope of work and mission and expertise. So I will be sharing that with everyone. So for closing, I agree that it's important to have made sure that this is fiscally responsible, and we heard that concern from several portions of our body. And like I said, I'm in full agreement, and that's partly why in this bill it asks the working group to look at the federal programs first, to have federal programs be leveraged to all degrees possible before we start having to look locally. And we've seen some success with that with a variety of programs around the island, including the Tsunami Awareness Program. Bill 241, as we've been talking about, develops a rip current and hiking safety program and ensures that our people are armed with information that can save lives. Guam is beautiful and special, as we mentioned, but it does come with certain hazards, and every year we lose too many of our loved ones and visitors to the rip current and hiking conditions. This bill will hopefully reverse that trend. One of the things that actually I didn't get to speak about, but I'll mention here, is I've seen a lot of our youth, and I talk to a lot of people of various ages that go out hiking, and it's perhaps surprising the level of unfamiliarity that they have with our landscape and with how to go out prepared. I've heard people talk about going out without a hat, without sunscreen, without water, without hiking shoes, and the list kind of goes on and on. So the more that we can arm them to help save them, the better. This bill asks the Department of Parks and Recreation to spearhead this effort and then work with the expertise out of various agencies. As I've mentioned, we've lost too many in our community and too many visitors to these dangers. They need and deserve a robust awareness and safety program that is consistent, that is permanent, and regularly updated, and not left to the winds of chance. So I thank my colleagues for the dialogue that made this bill stronger, and I hope for their continued support in helping safeguard our community. Suduis Masi, Madam Speaker.
Senator Taitano, can you please move the bill to the third reading voting file, please?
With pleasure. So, Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 241-35 COR to the voting file.
On that motion, without any objections, motion carries. Thank you, Senator Taitano. Colleagues, next on the agenda, we have Bill number 255-35 COR. Senator Pito Tarlahi, you are recognized on Bill 255.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Bill number 255-35 COR is amended by the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Build-Up. Introduced by myself and Madam Speaker, and I guess Senator Clint Rizal had is one that just came in to support this bill also. It is an act to amend Section 4301A, and Section 4302C, 9 of Article 3, Chapter 4, Title 4, Guam Code annotated relative to allowing choice for subscribers that participate in the Government of Guam Health Insurance contract. And I just want to add, Madam Speaker, that one of
Senator
the-
Chalahi first, please. Can we move it to the third reading for discussion?
Okay, Madam Speaker, I move that Bill number 25535 be moved to the third reading file
As amended.
as amended.
On that, Senator Chalahi, please proceed.
I just wanted to just kind of reiterate the movement of introducing this particular bill because I introduced on behalf of current and former Governor of Guam employees who had appealed that, you know, they're not really satisfied with the current health provider. And with that, I just wanted to say that our subscribers deserve to make that choice in as far as choosing what insurance that they want to enter into. We know that many people weren't happy with the transition of the current insurance versus the previous insurance, and services changed, causing confusion and misappointments. By offering a choice, we create a better opportunity for our subscribers to access health care, which is critical to maintain good health. We attempted to create a model where the government contribution remains the same and subscribers can access their favorite carrier or the one that meets their needs. And I asked my colleague to support this bill. And like I said, I initiated this bill because of so many complaints by the current insurance company. And let me just say on the onset that, you know, the people that were really dissatisfied with the services of the current health insurance are people that went to the Philippines. And I want to say that the people that experience services in the United States, I guess they're fine with this insurance. And let me just add to this, Madam Speaker. Some of the situations that occurred to many of the people that went to the Philippines and with their complaints is that they have to pay out of pocket when they go there, and when they come back to Guam, they were told that when they come back to Guam, they will be reimbursed of whatever they pay and what the insurance is going to return. And for one, when they come back to Guam, it takes like over a month to get reimbursed. Another situation that the experience over there is that it takes 3 to 4 days to obtain an LOA. And any ailment, more than one ailment, you have to also get a different LOA. And not all the doctors over at St. Luke Medical Center would treat a patient under the current insurance. The current health providers, for one, they don't have an office at St. Luke Medical Center. And the problem that they do have over at St. Luke Medical Center is that, you know, the doctors over there have requested that they increase the multiplier for some of the services that they do. And they believe that the current insurance don't have the amount that all the medical professionals are asking over there in as far as multiplier is concerned. And Madam Speaker, that is it. I just want to ask my colleague to support this because, like I said, the reason why I initiated this bill because of the so many complaints. And I guess everybody believes that the subscribers should be given a choice to make their own choice in having a particular insurance that they want. Thank you very much.
Situus Masi, Mr. Senator Chalahi. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone on the main motion? If not, Senator Terlahi, on the main motion, you are recognized.
Bill 255 seeks to change to reverse the Public Law 34-83 that was passed last term by the Guam Legislature. And that bill was introduced by Speaker Cruz. And I remember it very clearly last term because it was one of the few bills that was passed through an override of the governor's veto. The Public Law 34-83 was introduced by Speaker Cruz in 2017 to ensure the lower cost options of either the exclusive or non-exclusive proposals for the GovGuam health insurance contract would be forwarded to the governor. It did not preclude non-exclusive, meaning choice or more than one insurance company. It actually says that could be sent to the governor also, but it has to be the lower cost option. So obviously, in the recent negotiation, it was not the lowest cost option because it was not the one that was sent to the governor's office. Speaker Cruz had said that the impetus for the legislation was to slow the spiraling GovGuam health insurance costs because at the time, the government was having trouble paying its insurance premiums for retirees, and one of the health insurance companies was threatening to discontinue covering retirees entirely. I remember because we received phone calls in our offices that from retirees because they were being told at the clinics that the insurance was not being paid and that they were, not going to receive services or threatened that they would not be receiving services if the government of Guam did not pay their health insurance contract. At that time, the government was experiencing a $13 million shortfall in appropriated funds for the health insurance contract. That was a very real threat to the retirees, and it was our override of the veto at the time was a way to ensure that we would never again face that type of threat. Unfortunately, we see today, Madam Speaker, that we are not only facing that threat, but many other financial threats to many agencies, and not just, to our ability to procure health insurance for GovGuam employees only. Speaker Cruz also pointed out when advocating for the single lowest cost option that the administration at the time was given choices for health insurance contracts prior to the change in the law, and he had tracked this for several years, and that the administration had decided to take the non-exclusive contract each time, despite the fact that the negotiating team had stated very clearly that going with the other contract would have resulted in about $20 million in savings. $20 million. So this brings us to today, only 2 years from when that law was enacted and 8 months into a new health insurance contract. We've only acted under that new law for 8 months now, and we're looking to repeal it in order to authorize the administration to go into contracts with, the original bill said, the top 2 insurance companies, and to decide on the health insurance contract. Although based on the testimony from the Department of Administration, they did not request this legislation and actually raised many concerns regarding reverting back to allowing more than the single lowest cost option. Mr. Byrne, the director of the Department of Administration, stated, and the Department of Administration is responsible for negotiating the contract, implementing the contract. When there are complaints with the contract, it is the Department of Administration that pretty much manages this contract. And he stated at the public hearing on this bill, and I quote here, "Firstly, it is clear to me that a single most economical bid does identify the lowest cost for the service. That was apparent from the results of the negotiation for FY 2020. Lowest cost means the lowest cost for both the government and the subscribers. That's what they were using as their criteria. All of us are aware of the ever-increasing cost of healthcare." He then goes on to say, "Secondly, if there are deficiencies in the performance of a successfully bidding carrier, the remedy is not to introduce another carrier, which may offer a benefit which satisfies one subscriber, but another benefit which falls short of subscribers' expectations. The remedy is to make sure that the operating carrier's product offering and customer service reaches the level promised in their bid." And that is the job of the Department of Administration, to ensure that these complaints are handled, that whatever was promised in the contract, by any contract in our government, that those promises come to fruition. That is what we bargained for. He then goes on to say that the health insurance negotiating team is well into the process for selecting a carrier for FY 2021. They do this in advance, Madam Speaker, because of a law, I think also passed by Speaker Cruz, that requires them to complete those negotiations earlier so that we in the legislature can have that information and what it's going to cost the government before we finalize our FY 2021 budget. The date, according to Mr. Byrne, the date for bid submissions was last week, meaning the week before the public hearing or when he testified on the bill. And that would have put it to just about a month ago from today, that the bids were submitted, meaning the process is well underway. He asked that the legislature not agree to legislative intervention, which could delay the committee's work and compress the enrollment timeline as they experienced last year. And he reminded us, Madam Speaker, that one of the issues last year was we were scrambling to enroll because of the many protests that had occurred, because the legislature had changed the health insurance contract negotiating law during that year as well, Madam Speaker, and left the negotiating committee to scramble to make these changes, and of course there was a protest. The current exclusive contract for FY20 was estimated at $108 million. The fiscal note for Bill 255 states that there is an estimated 10 to 11% difference, or $11 million difference, between the exclusive and non-exclusive proposals in FY 2020. And so one might say this bill would only cost us $11 million. But we can't ignore that approximately $11 million was also added to the previous FY20 health insurance contract. Some of this increase is due to the general increase in health insurance costs, but the other big difference in our current health contract and the previous one is the addition or mandate that our insurance plan includes the private hospital with Public Law 2-35. The legislature enacted a policy that increased our health insurance costs, and this additional policy change would potentially mean a net increase of our health insurance contract by $22 million over just 2 years. It would seem to me during these very uncertain times that we would want to reverse that trend and find a way to save money. The other point discussed in detail at the public hearing and in many letters from constituents is the desire for choice. And I asked the Director of Administration at that hearing about choice, and if the current health insurance plan included most of the health providers that were covered in previous plans, because that was what was promised. And he said the only difference was the addition of GRMC, to all plans and the addition of health providers worldwide due to the current insurances providers network. So instead of a decrease, there was an increase in providers, and providers meaning doctors, clinics, which facilities you can go to, specialists. But I do acknowledge that there have been complaints with the current plan. We have received those in my office as well, and there was a rushed start and introduction to the new health insurance provider with the FY20 contract, partially due, as I said earlier, to protests regarding the change in legislation. But these complaints, they must be addressed. They must be addressed by the Department of Administration and by the carrier. And the contract is very explicit about how complaints should be addressed. Just as complaints for every previous health care contract, Madam Speaker, had to be addressed. Just as any complaints with any contract, not even health insurance, Madam Speaker, must be addressed by those in the government who are charged with implementing that contract. We've seen very recently that this was called into action with the quarantine hotels. When they thought they were not getting what they bargained for, then they had to, do something about it, take action. But it's the government side, Madam Speaker, that has to take action. There's a provision in the amended version of the bill that was put on the floor today that would allow employee or retiree to choose any of the qualifying plans that GovGuam doesn't choose, and the individual would pay any difference in the premium at their own cost. This part of the bill was not at the public hearing. It was not available to us, so we were not able to ask questions about this, and there may be some questions I think that we're acting in the dark on. For example, what is qualified exactly, and how are they going to be deemed qualified, and what would those differences in premiums look like? And how many people potentially might avail of that? Because that's going to affect the price that we get in the bid by the companies seeking bulk. And all these companies have testified that, of course, prices are lower when they can get the exclusive contracts because it's like a bulk buying. They're able to get economies of scale by getting all the customers in the government of Guam. While this provision potentially does drive up the cost of health insurance bids even further because it causes that uncertainty among the bidders about how much of the pool they will actually obtain. When a health insurance provider knows it will have entire 100% of the government employees in their contract, they are able to potentially lower costs due to bulk services. The more this is split, the more our prices go up, Madam Speaker. Now is simply not the time to revert back to a previous policy that would negatively impact our budget at a time when our budget, we can't even get a firm estimate on the revenues. We do not have any estimates on the shortfall we are facing for FY21. We are banking on federal funds and circulating in our economy that might save us, really. But currently, the FY 2020 estimates, they all predict a loss, Madam Speaker. To BPT revenues, business privilege tax, and withholding taxes, and huge losses in the special funds. The estimated fiscal impact of $11 million for this bill, may seem relatively low when you're looking at some of the huge losses, I think, like, for example, to withholding taxes, but still, it's significant, it's making the matters worse. And the 11 million was based on the introduced version of the bill. It does not encompass the changes that were made to the bill that I think might actually or will surely drive the prices up. And so the 11 million is a low estimate. But this 11 million is critical for GovGuam purposes. It is what we are going to use to upgrade our hospital. That was the amount we fought over last year to try to put towards the Guam Memorial Hospital to fix that roof, electrical panel. We are going to need to ensure unemployed persons in our neighbors. And they're estimating today, I think, 21,000 employees unemployed. That's a lot of people, Madam Speaker, that Medicaid and MIP is completely locally funded, and it's always been underfunded. So this year they're facing a shortage, and next year, what will be the shortage? We need every dime that we can spend to cover everyone in our government, Madam Speaker, to make sure we pay our tax refunds on time, and to support landlords, tenants, small businesses, to provide food assistance, address any shortfalls that we can't even see now that are caused by this pandemic emergency. And it's our role here to appropriate funds and direct the priorities of the government. It is not our role to jump in. You know, we've already dictated the benefits that will be covered in a GovGuam health insurance contract. The legislature, has made it possible what benefit you will get, what type of service. That's where we come in. We are not supposed to be coming in a procurement process to say which company you should pick. And I do think, I stand by the policy that if we are going to get the same benefits and we can get it at a good cost, and the issues of, company issues, that those should be addressed. And I'm hoping that the negotiating team will absolutely make sure that is a big factor this year, so that there are no problems like that, Madam Speaker. So I object to the bill, and I think we should stick with the current system and at least let it play out for one more year and see how it works for us, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Therese Chalayi. Anybody else on the main question? Anybody on the main question? Senator Sabina Perez, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do want to reiterate some of the points of the retiring speaker. I do have concerns about this bill. During this global pandemic, our island faces one of the greatest economic challenges that is still yet to be seen as far as the impacts. And I think, it's important to really kind of think about our, fiscal responsibility and fiscal restraint, and so to speak. And looking at the fiscal note, it states that that health insurance carriers that came from unexclusive bids were 10 to 11% higher. And what this could mean is basically higher premiums. And so when we think about, the community as a whole, we're seeing families struggling. And, in looking about how we're going to prioritize the taxpayers' money, I think it's really important responsibility of this body to weigh that in regards to how are we going to utilize these very limited resources. So I think one of the things to think about is also the unintended consequences of choosing multiple or having multiple insurance companies. I mean, should the premiums rise to a level where now the individual would have to think about whether to cover? I mean, it could potentially mean that they would have to make a decision, should the premiums be high enough, that they would have to make the individual, the employee would have to make a decision on whether their family members, whether the cost is, they can absorb the cost for their family members. So I think that's one thing that we need to really think about in regards to moving forward with something that could increase the premiums. And we all know that, health premiums generally rise. And I agree with the retiring speaker that, a lot of the issues that were brought up amongst the petitioners I feel can be addressed by creating the right specifications, improving that process, and to have this situation where, it's going to bring an increase in premiums. I think that's something I hope that we can weigh and prevent from happening. I think in thinking holistically, I think it's important to see that this will have an impact, and kind of weighing those decisions as we move forward on deciding on whether to support or oppose this bill. Because I think this choice will come at a cost, and I think it's only fair that we kind of restrain ourselves in regards to expenditures of our government. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Anybody else on the main motion? Senator Lee, I will recognize you at this time.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, and on this bill, I have a couple of questions for the author if he would yield, but I think it's also important that we as a body just take a moment to acknowledge some of the lessons that we've learned from mandating a single carrier plan over the past year. And I think, as a previous speaker had mentioned, we've received a lot of feedback from many of our stakeholders, many GovGuam employees and retirees on this issue, on some of the challenges that they've been having. And I know, we've received a lot of emails and very frustrated phone calls. I think it's really clear our active employees and our retirees have dealt with a new carrier, and ranging from complaints about a lack of access to this carrier and a lack of opportunity to ask questions and have those questions answered timely, also to concerns about a higher increase in the cost of prescription drugs. Many of them have come back to us and asked them to give them a chance for a choice. So I think that's what this bill does. It's a chance to go back possibly to their previous insurance company or look at what else is out there. But I do feel like it's incumbent upon this body to really balance what's going to be best for government workers with what's the best use of the taxes paid by everyone. And so because of those concerns, I'm really glad that Bill 225, as reported out by the committee, added language to cap spending increases due to this reversion in our policy. And again, at this time, Madam Speaker, I'd just like to ask questions on these changes to the author if he would yield.
Please state your question. Yes.
Thank
Senator.
you, Madam Speaker. So my first question is, beginning on page 3, line 1, Bill 255 now would require employees and retirees to, quote, pay any difference in premiums between the most economical plan that was passed in previous legislation and another qualified plan of their choice. So if the author could just explain how this process would work, and if we've been able to discuss with stakeholders how will this affect the projected cost for the insurance contract as a whole.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, mela da bifinut sabora. Tutungu tamanu para ta tulis sa lopi, lo hafet na manggagi gwini. Ko para ta juray tau ta, patafagwentus put gasto. Leliko na eji tuma prebas tina bill. Leliko na ti ma experienza I chinat saga. Neji manhano pa Filipinas, manhano talumagi, guaha matay. Sa tisina maten di Filipina, hafa na manggagit gwini. Huku ka estino, chogi na bill. Sa guaho, retired to yung militar tinisisaryo. Leto siya manay nata ni mantaza sa Lapinya, manana pa Filipinas, managag yung semana, dispesti man matendi sa tisina. Tisina man matendi sa taza Amerika malago maksepta. Hafan na manggagit gwini. Ilali ko na dyan mangwakin to niti Timan siguro na este na biyo leko na timatsagi sinatsaga. Jajige na tumotugyo guni sa ejige na gagyo guni ejige na sumenidoto. Para ta jure tau ta. Ja nababusti na klase imang wakinto si pudi gasto. O kaya finaisi nila sa tau. Ipo fan manay lugar po maajik hafa maulik. Jagin unwa mas maulik pos bayla za unwa. Lo mayla tatas piasa este na insurance. Ipromotetihi, actually ipromotetihi tau-tautan ni man retired. Man mandate na para uno na insurance sa pudi barato. Di enaw na malalagay binarato. Edzo na malalagay po fan mafa. Maulik tau-tauta. Jangin manisisita. Edzo na mediko ipo fan fina maulik. Tutungo after mano po halo bigisi lapil o dalay magaja tisine ta jure tau-tauta. $11 million? Quanto tagagasta gyujung? Maski million dollars. Estige na tatsotsog este. Edzo na manggagit ginipatan manajuda.
Okay.
Za edje bang wekinto sa tijanyeste na bill. Ti matsatsagi minasapit. Ti manhano pa Pilipinas. Quanto na tau man matu ke oficina, maago ke oficina. Quanto man testigo. Na mabira siya magi sa tisina man majuda. Mungkin mangentus pud gasto bisa sina benti. Takurihi problema ni salapi. Dala ja tisina matu ke kurasonta. Datatendi jo siya tau-tautan ni man masasapi ni man mamatay. Jangin ti malofan este na biyo pos dialo. Lo debi de pega ki konsensian mizo. Na edzige na malagwil pa siridor para ta jura tau-tauta. Zazaho no mahungo ni tau-tauta nestigio na tumotugi. Iparbay putehi tau-tauta. Pago amjo ni ti maprebes na biyo. Dialo. Sa edzige tinengo mizo. Basta mangentos pod gasto. Dale ja tisina. Tas pempenu ta tafa maulik este.
Si Jus
Masi, Madam Speaker.
Si Jus Masi, I will go ahead and just note for the record, based on that, Senator Lee, based on the recommendation at the public hearing, there was a note that if an employee could choose another plan from those qualified offers that go up to the governors, that if they wanted to do that opportunity would be extended to them, that the basic principle that would be charged to both the government and the employee, if the employee chose another, then they would pay the differences of what the government was supporting.
Point
So
of
that's-
order, Madam Speaker.
I'm just.
That is not at all what was said in
I know,
Chamorro earlier.
I know,
That you're testifying
Senator
from the
Therese,
podium.
I understand.
And I'm also raising
Senator
to a point of
Therese,
order that
Please.
the floor was yielded to answer a question, not to
Yes.
have further debate. And the question was not answered at all.
Senator Therese, if I may, thank you very much. Again, as noted, it was not a reiteration of what was interpreted by Senator Terlai. As the oversight chair, I wanted just to bring to the table to the senator asking on the inquiry, as it was under my oversight, that based on the recommendations, that's how that was included. And she shook her head. Senator Lee, you still have the floor.
Suzus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I do want to just reiterate from my question and what was the response from the author. I agree, we absolutely want to be able to help our government employees and our retirees. And so with that, I do appreciate the changes that were made, again, in committee, because I think it shows that that there was work done to rein in the spending associated with reinstating choice in this bill. And then I also wanted to just ask an additional question, Madam Speaker, if I may, and I'll direct it to you for the author. On page 2, line 2, Bill 255 now requires all entities in the executive branch, including autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies, public corporations, and authorities, to participate in the Guam Group Health Insurance Program. And it's my understanding, Madam Speaker, that this is meant to increase the total pool of patients. And we want to have a large patient pool as an opportunity for us, again, to drive down the cost. So my question to clarify is, aside from GITA, the Guam Economic Development Authority, what other agencies in this category may lose their unique insurance plan and will now be folded in with the rest of the executive branch?
Senator Lee, first of all, just based on that inquiry, I want to note that page 2, line 2, that inclusion was a technical fix which added existing codified language that was inadvertently omitted.
I apologize,
in the
Madam
bill.
Speaker.
So
If I could
under-
just request a brief
Yes,
recess?
I will take that recess. I was just going to request that. I was just going to note that based on what has been provided. The legislature is back from recess. Senator Pito, would you like to yield to the question?
What question is that, Madam Speaker?
Senator Lee, you may restate your question.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So it's my understanding that now all entities in the executive branch, including autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies, that everybody will be mandated to participate in the GovGuam health insurance program. So I just wanted to know, aside from GITA, what other agencies are in this category that will potentially lose their unique insurance plan and will now be folded in with the rest of the executive branch based on this change in the bill?
Senator Terlahi, would you like to?
I guess the bill came out with just the Superior Court, but in as far as the other agencies under Governor Guam, there's, this is part of the plan, the program. They're going to have to be part of this.
Senator Lee, does that answer your question?
If I could just request another brief recess, Madam
You
Speaker.
may have it. Y minuto 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Senator Lee, you still have the floor. Thank you. Senator Terlahi, would you like to answer that question again? I know you noted Superior Court, which is a part of the judiciary, was one of those, but from the executive branch, is there any other agency that you know of, or is it all inclusive?
Madam Speaker, all I can say is that the court and the legislature and autonomous agencies can make their own choice of insurance.
Okay.
Line agencies are the ones that would be part of this plan.
Thank you.
Point of information,
Thank-
Madam Speaker. That is not absolutely correct. I would hope that we can get DOA in here to answer the questions. I know for a fact that GWA and I think GPA are part of our current
The
contract.
question,
so the
Senator
autonomous
Terlahi, if I
agencies
may,
are not all
was
part of it.
for executive line agencies, the author of the of the inquiry.
No, the question was about autonomous. Which autonomous?
It was line agencies, ma'am. Senator Lee, you still have the floor.
Sudos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I really want to thank the author and for indulging me because I just wanted to raise the point that I really believe this bill has attempted to strike a balance between our responsibility to pay GovGuam personnel, but also the fiduciary responsibility that we have to the taxpaying public. I'm just trying to understand how that would work and how we would be able to continue with existing laws that are on the books and still be able to maintain this balance that's detailed in this bill. But I do agree with the previous speaker that perhaps the safer and more responsible route would be for us to consider a delay in the implementation of this measure so that it doesn't have any impact on the current negotiations. As we've seen in the not-so-distant past, legislative action over GovGuam's health insurance contract can certainly lead to very costly litigation, confusion, uncertainty for a lot of our active employees and our retirees. And so, Madam Speaker, I just would like to, if possible, reserve the balance. I look forward to amendments from the body, but also developing my own amendments to attempt to address the legitimate concerns in this bill. And I hope that we are able to work together to take away any of these unintended consequences and really try to do right by both the GovGuam employees and retirees as well as the taxpayers. Sudos Masi.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion?
Madam Speaker,
You
point of
already
information.
State your point of information.
Yeah, several times it's been repeated that the current law does not give a choice, but the current law gives a choice between an exclusive or a non-exclusive. And it gives that choice, Madam Speaker, to the negotiating team, and they choose the most economical and beneficial healthcare insurance. So for this year, the non-exclusive was not the most economical and beneficial. But that's not to say that that would never happen or that that's not available to them. If the companies come in more economical, then they would be chosen. And so we shouldn't perpetuate that incorrect information. The other information, Madam Speaker, is I think it's incorrect and misleading to assert that the amendments rein in costs when they in fact accelerate costs, especially to the subscribers. And there's no evidence at all in our file. The fiscal note's not been updated with these amendments, so the amendments cannot be said to reduce the costs. I think it's the opposite, Madam Speaker.
Duly noted. Anyone else on the main motion? Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized.
Sudos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just listening to the debate and some of the concerns of our colleagues, I'd like to make a motion that we go into Committee of the Whole to discuss this bill.
There has been a motion to go into the committee of the whole for this bill. Are there any objections? There's an objection. All those in favor to go into the committee of whole, please signify by raising your hand. 2, 3, 4. Motion carries. We will be in recess for a short while. Emina 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. Senator Joseph Augustine. Please.
Madam Speaker, it being that we will be resolving into the committee of the whole, I recommend that number one, that you would chair that committee because that happens to be your oversight, and that the Department of Administration will be in attendance so they can answer all the questions we have. And I will contact OFB and I'll have them on standby. So if there's any questions with funding and stuff like that, they can answer that, and that we recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
We are in recess till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.